"This isn't a drill, Lieutenant Commander." The words, distorted by the underwater comms unit, echoed in Maya Olsen's helmet, colder than the crushing deep of the Pacific. This wasn't Petty Officer Kowalski's usual grumbling. This was something else, a venom she'd never heard before. The date was October 23rd, the time 2300 hours. Off the coast of San Clemente Island, California, the ocean was a void of liquid obsidian. The moon was a prisoner of thick marine layer clouds, leaving the elite operators of SEAL Team 7 to navigate by the ghostly green glow of their instruments. Their mission tonight was a deep-water qualification test piloting a new class of SEAL delivery vehicle, or SDV, to a depth of 200 feet, planting a simulated charge on a sunken wreck, and returning to the insertion point. Lieutenant Commander Maya Olsen, calcine Valkyrie, was at the helm. At 34, she was a seasoned operator, a veteran of a dozen classified deployments, and one of the few women to ever command an SDV team. Her reputation was forged in the unforgiving landscapes of the Hindu Kush and the treacherous waters of the South China Sea. She was sharp, demanding, and respected. But respect, she knew, was a fragile thing. "Time to target, 5 minutes," she stated, her voice calm and professional, betraying none of the unease that had been gnawing at her all day. The mission was routine, but the crew wasn't. Petty Officer First Class Tank Kowalski, her navigator, had been a thundercloud of resentment for weeks. His usual locker room bravado had curdled into something sour and insubordinate ever since Maya had been promoted to lead the team. He was a mountain of a man, an old-school operator who believed command was a birthright of biology, not merit. "Valkyrie, you sure about that heading?" Kowalski's voice crackled again, dripping with condescension. "Looks a little off from my screen." "Your screen is slave to mine, Tank, I'm sure," she replied, keeping her tone level. It was then that the first warning light flickered. "Oxygen mixture, yellow. Control, Valkyrie, we have a minor fluctuation in the O2 mix, monitoring." Before Mission Control could even respond, the light flashed red. A klaxon, muted by the water pressure, screamed inside the small cockpit. Then, another light, life support, critical failure. "What the hell?" Maya yelled, her hands flying across the control panel. "I'm losing primary systems." "This isn't a drill." Lieutenant Commander Kowalski's voice was suddenly right behind her, a chilling whisper in her ear. She tried to turn, but a massive hand clamped down on her shoulder, pinning her to the seat. Through the reflection in the viewport, she could see another operator, Petty Officer Miller, moving behind her. "Kowalski, what are you doing?" "Showing you what happens when you fly too close to the sun, Mum," he sneered. The word "ma'am" was an insult, a weapon. His hand moved from her shoulder to her rebreather hose. With a sudden, violent twist, he ripped it free from its port. Icy sea water flooded her helmet, a primal, suffocating shock that stole her breath. She thrashed, clawing at her helmet seals, but Miller was there, pinning her arms. The water filled her vision, blurring the glowing red lights of the dying submersible into a hellish constellation. "This is a tragic accident." Kowalski's voice, now distant and warped by the water filling her ears, was the last thing she heard. The lieutenant commander, she panicked, made a mistake. Her lungs were on fire. The darkness wasn't just outside the sub anymore. It was inside her, consuming her from within. Her last conscious thought wasn't of fear, but of a searing, white-hot rage. As she blacked out, the image of a face flashed in her mind, not Kowalski's, but another, far more powerful, from a memory she had tried so hard to bury. How much time had passed? Seconds, minutes, an eternity. Maya's consciousness returned with a violent cough, expelling a lungful of salt water that burned her throat. She was lying on the cold, steel deck of a ship. The smell of diesel and salt filled the air. Her head pounded in rhythm with a ship's engine. "Easy there, Lieutenant Commander. You're lucky to be alive." The voice was familiar. Ben Doc Carter, the team's chief hospital corpsman, was kneeling over her, his face etched with worry. His hands were gentle but firm as he checked her vitals. "What happened?" she rasped, her voice a raw whisper. "Official story is your SDV had a catastrophic systems failure. Kowalski and Miller performed a heroic rescue. Pulled you out just in time." Doc's eyes told a different story. They darted nervously toward the far end of the deck, where Captain David Harrison stood, arms crossed, his bulldog face set in stone. Maya pushed herself up, her body screaming in protest. Every muscle ached, her throat felt like it was lined with sandpaper. She saw Kowalski and Miller wrapped in thermal blankets, sipping coffee, looking for all the world like heroes. Kowalski caught her eye and gave a subtle, triumphant smirk. Rage, pure and undiluted, surged through her. She staggered to her feet. "Captain, that's not what happened. Kowalski, he sabotaged the sub. He tried to kill me." Captain Harrison walked over, his boots thudding heavily on the deck. He was a man carved from the old Navy, a commander who valued the reputation of his unit above all else. He put a hand on her shoulder, his grip like iron. "Olsen," he said, his voice a low growl meant for her alone. "You experienced nitrogen narcosis, hypoxia. You were disoriented. You're lucky my men saved you." "Sir, I know what I saw. I know what he did." "What you think you saw," Harrison corrected, his eyes cold and hard. "There is no evidence of sabotage. The SDV is at the bottom of the ocean. It's your word against a decorated petty officers. Now, you will go to the infirmary, you will be debriefed, and you will confirm the official report. An accident. Is that clear?" It was an order, but it was more than that. It was a threat, a wall of silence descending around her. She looked from Harrison's implacable face to Kowalski's smug grin, to the other team members who wouldn't meet her eyes. In the vastness of the Pacific, she had never felt so alone. She was a commander, an officer, a SEAL, but in that moment, she was just a liability, a problem to be managed. As Doc Carter helped her toward the infirmary, he leaned in and whispered, so quietly she almost missed it. "Your brother hose, the coupling was sheared clean off. No way that happens in a systems failure. I took a picture before they deep-sixed the evidence." A tiny flicker of hope, but it was quickly overshadowed by a chilling realization. This wasn't just about Kowalski's resentment. Harrison's immediate, iron-fisted cover-up. It was too fast, too efficient. This went deeper. The face from her memory flashed again, a distinguished, smiling man in an admiral's uniform, shaking hands with someone he shouldn't have been, on a private yacht in a foreign sea. Suddenly, she understood. They hadn't tried to kill her because she was a woman in command. They tried to kill her because of what she knew. And they had failed. Now, the real war was just beginning. 2 days later, the official investigation was a carefully orchestrated sham. Lieutenant Commander Maya Olsen was on temporary medical leave, confined to her quarters on the Naval Amphibious Base Coronado. The official report, signed by Captain Harrison, cited equipment malfunction compounded by operator error under extreme duress as the cause of the accident. Maya was the operator. The error was hers. Her career, once a shining star, was now tarnished with a mark of incompetence. The isolation was a prison. Her team, the men she'd trusted with her life, now avoided her. Their silence was a verdict. Kowalski and Miller were being lauded for their heroism, their version of events becoming the unassailable truth. But in this quiet, sterile room, the memories she had suppressed for over a year began to surface with terrifying clarity. It was a covert reconnaissance mission in the South China Sea. Her team was tasked with monitoring maritime traffic near the contested Spratly Islands. One night, through the high-powered optics of their surveillance post, she saw it. A luxury yacht, flagged to a shell corporation in the Cayman Islands, meeting with a small, unmarked freighter. And on the deck of that yacht, under the soft glow of lantern light, stood Admiral Marcus Thorne, 4-star Admiral Thorne. The Vice Chief of Naval Operations, a legend. A man universally admired for his integrity and strategic genius. He was shaking hands with a group of men in dark suits, their faces hard, their posture military. They didn't look like businessmen. They looked like mercenaries. She had logged the sighting, as per protocol. A high-ranking officer in an unscheduled, undeclared meeting in a sensitive area. The next day, the log entry was gone, wiped from the system. When she quietly asked her then-commander about it, he told her to forget what she saw, that some things were above her pay grade. A week later, that commander was killed in a tragic helicopter crash, another accident. The pieces were clicking into place, forming a picture so monstrous it made her stomach clench. Kowalski wasn't the mastermind. He was a pawn, a blunt instrument motivated by his own petty bigotry, but wielded by a much more powerful hand. A sharp knock on her door broke her trance. "Commander Olsen, Commander Jackson Riley, NCIS, I have a few questions." The man who entered was tall and lean, with an easy confidence that didn't quite mask the sharpness in his eyes. He wasn't in uniform, wearing a plain polo shirt and slacks, but he moved with the purpose of a man who is used to being in charge. "They told me you were resting," he said, his voice a smooth baritone. "But you don't look like a woman who's resting." "What do you want, Commander Riley?" Maya asked, her voice flat. "The truth. Captain Harrison's report is neat to neat. A brand new SDV fails, a decorated commander panics, and two heroes save the day. It reads like a screenplay." He sat down opposite her, his gaze unwavering. "I've read your file, Olsen. You don't panic." For the first time in days, Maya felt a sliver of something other than rage and despair. But she was wary. Who could she trust? The official report is the only story there is. Riley sighed, leaning back. "Look, I can't force you to talk. But someone is trying very hard to make sure this investigation goes away quickly. Memos from the Pentagon, calls from staffers I've never heard of. When the top brass tries this hard to bury a story, it usually means there's something valuable under the dirt. I'm just a guy with a shovel." Before she could respond, her personal cell phone buzzed. An unknown number. She ignored it. It buzzed again and again. On the fourth buzz, she answered, annoyed. "Who is this?" "Valkyrie, this is Doc." Ben Carter's voice was a frantic whisper. "Don't talk, just listen. They're transferring me, effective immediately, to a desk job in Bethesda. They're burying me, just like they're burying you." Maya's blood ran cold. "Doc, what's going on?" "The photo," he hissed, "the one of the Re-Brother coupling. I sent it to a secure email, the one you use for personal correspondence. Check it, and watch your back. This is bigger than Harrison. Way bigger." The line went dead. She fumbled with her phone, hands shaking, and opened her encrypted email account. There it was, an image file. She clicked on it. The photo was clear, taken in the harsh light of the recovery ship. It showed the end of her Re-Brother hose. It wasn't bent or cracked. It was sheared through, with clean, deliberate marks that could only have been made by a tool. A cable cutter, or something similar. It was irrefutable proof of sabotage. As she stared at the screen, a black sedan with government plates pulled up outside her building. Two men in suits got out. They weren't NCIS. They had the hard, blank look of intelligence agency spooks. Commander Riley saw them through the window. His easy demeanor vanished, replaced by a cold focus. "Friends of yours?" "I don't think so," Maya whispered. "Time to go," Riley said. Standing up, "The front door is no longer an option." He pointed to the fire escape outside her window. "I have a feeling our conversation is just getting started, Commander." The black sedan, the spooks, Doc's sudden transfer, this was a coordinated effort. A massive, powerful machine was grinding into motion, and she was the stone in its gears. They weren't just trying to silence her anymore, they were trying to erase her. The fire escape groaned under their weight as they scrambled down into the alley. The air, thick with the smell of salt and asphalt, felt charged with danger. "My car is 2 blocks down," Riley said, his voice low and urgent. "We need to move, now." As they emerged from the alley, a powerful motorcycle roared to life at the far end of the street. It sped towards them, the rider clad in black from head to toe. It wasn't a joyride. The bike swerved directly onto the sidewalk, aiming for Maya. Down, Riley shoved her hard against a brick wall as the motorcycle screamed past, missing her by inches. The rider didn't slow down, disappearing around the corner. It was a message, a warning shot. "Okay," Riley breathed, helping her up, "so they're playing rough." They made it to his car, an unassuming Ford sedan that belied the reinforced frame and bullet-resistant glass she noticed as she got in. He drove with a calm efficiency, his eyes constantly scanning the mirrors. "They're not just trying to discredit you, Olsen, they're trying to spook you, or worse," Riley said, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. "That photo Doc Carter sent me, it's a game changer. But it also puts a target on your back, and his. They're already neutralizing him," Maya said, the bitterness rising in her throat. "A transfer to a desk job thousands of miles away. He's a combat medic, a master of trauma care. Putting him behind a desk is like caging an eagle." "It's how they work," Riley replied. "Character assassination, bureaucratic exile, it's cleaner than a bullet. But that message on the motorcycle tells me they're getting impatient." He pulled into a dusty, forgotten corner of a shipyard overlooking San Diego Bay. The rusting hulls of decommissioned destroyers stood like steel ghosts in the fading light. He killed the engine and turned to her. "All right, Commander, no more games. I put my career on the line by pulling you out of there. I need to know what I'm walking into. What did you see that has an admiral and his watchdogs so terrified?" Maya took a deep breath. The wall she had built around the memory of the South China Sea finally crumbled. She told him everything: the yacht, the unmarked freighter, the mercenaries, and the face of Admiral Marcus Thorne, smiling as he betrayed his country. Riley listened without interruption, his expression growing grimmer with every word. When she finished, he was silent for a long moment, staring out at the gray water. "Aegis Dynamics," he finally said, the name sounding like a curse. "You know them." "I know of them. They're one of the largest private military contractors in the world. Officially, they provide logistical support and security for corporate clients in higher-risk areas." Unofficially, he trailed off, rubbing his jaw. "They're a private army, untraceable, deniable. They've been linked to destabilizing governments in Africa, corporate espionage in Europe, you name it. They're the boogeyman the CIA whispers about. And you saw Admiral Thorne meeting with them. He was selling them something," Maya said, the conclusion now inescapable, "or giving it to them. Something valuable enough to risk treason for. Something valuable enough to kill a SEAL team commander to keep it quiet." Riley started the car. "We're out of our depth here, Olsen. This is way above a simple NCIS murder investigation. This is national security. I need to get this information to someone I trust at the highest level." But as he put the car in drive, his phone rang. It was his direct superior at NCIS headquarters in Quantico. "Riley here. Yes, sir. I understand. No, sir. I don't have eyes on her. Yes, sir. I'll stand down." He hung up, his face pale. "That was Director Evans. There's a NavCommand alert out for you, Olsen. A warrant. You're being charged with desertion and assaulting a superior officer." "What? That's insane. They're not just discrediting you anymore. They're making you a criminal." "A fugitive," Riley said, his voice strained. "And I've been ordered to cease my investigation and disengage. If I'm caught helping you, I'll be charged with obstruction." The net was closing. Every institution she had dedicated her life to, the Navy, the command structure, now even the justice system was being turned against her. She was an enemy of the state she had sworn to protect. "So what now?" Maya asked, her voice hollow. "You drop me off at the nearest corner?" Riley looked at her, then at the road ahead, then back at her. A battle was raging behind his eyes, duty versus conscience. "My orders were to disengage," he said slowly. "They didn't say when." He gunned the engine, pulling out of the shipyard and onto the freeway, heading north, away from the city. "First, we disappear. Then, we find a bigger shovel." The city lights of San Diego receded in the rearview mirror, shimmering like a promise that had been broken. Maya Olsen, the fugitive, was driving into the unknown with the one man who believed her, hunted by the very people who were supposed to be on her side. The loneliness was a physical weight, pressing down on her. She had never been a person who prayed, but now she sent a silent plea into the darkness: "Don't let me be the only one who knows. Please, let there be someone else." 200 miles north, in the arid expanse of the Mojave Desert, a man was meticulously cleaning a .50 caliber sniper rifle. His movements were economical and precise, honed by decades of practice. He lived in a small, off-the-grid cabin, surrounded by nothing but sand, rock, and the ghosts of his past, to the world, and to the U.S. Navy. Master Chief Petty Officer Alex Ghost Ramirez was dead. Killed in action during a helicopter crash in the South China Sea a year ago. The same crash that had killed Maya's previous commander. Alex, however, had a different story. He had survived. He had watched from the jungle's edge as a team of Aegis Dynamics mercenaries, not a foreign military, picked through the wreckage, confirming the kills and retrieving a single, high-value briefcase. He had seen enough to know that reporting what happened through official channels would be a death sentence, so he became a ghost. He used his survival and evasion skills not to get home, but to vanish. For a year, he had been a phantom, using his old network of contacts, the ones he trusted implicitly to gather whispers and shadows of information. He was hunting, and his prey was Admiral Marcus Thorne. A satellite phone, his only link to the outside world, chirped on a nearby table. He picked it up. The voice on the other end was strained, belonging to a contact deep inside the Pentagon's intelligence directorate. "Ghost, you there?" "I'm here," Alex said, his voice a low rasp. "It's happening. They're moving on Valkyrie." The Coronado incident was a kill attempt. Now they branded her a fugitive. They're boxing her in. Alex felt a cold knot tighten in his gut. Maya Olsen, he'd served with her on to deployments. She was tough, smart, and a hell of an operator. He knew she had been on the surveillance mission the night Thorne met the yacht. She was the only other living witness from his old unit. "Where is she now?" he asked. "Don't know. She dropped off the grid with an NCIS agent named Riley. He's been ordered off the case, but it looks like he went rogue." They're both being hunted. Alex looked at the rifle in his hands. His war had been a cold one, fought in the shadows with whispers and encrypted data. But now, it was about to go hot. Maya was the key. She had seen Thorne's face, just as he had. Her testimony, combined with the evidence he had painstakingly gathered, was the only thing that could bring the whole rotten structure down. "They won't have her," Alex said, his voice flat and final. He began to break down the rifle, packing it into a nondescript case. His time in the desert was over. The ghost was about to come back to life. Meanwhile, in a cheap motel room in Barstow, Maya and Riley were trying to formulate a plan. Riley had used his own credit cards to create a false trail leading towards Las Vegas, while they paid for the room in cash and drove a burner car he'd had stashed for emergencies. "We can't fight the entire Pentagon," Maya said, pacing the threadbare carpet. "Thorne has too much power, too much influence. He can erase us with a phone call." "Not if we get the story out," Riley countered, hunched over a laptop. "But we can't go to the press. They'd shred your reputation before you could say no comment. We need hard, irrefutable evidence. Something that bypasses the chain of command and can't be spun." "Like what?" "The tech," Riley said, his eyes gleaming. "Whatever Thorne is selling to Aegis, if we can find out what it is and prove the transfer, we can take it directly to the Secretary of Defense. Or even the President." It was an impossible task. They were two fugitives with no resources, against a 4-star admiral with a private army and the full weight of the U.S. intelligence apparatus at his command. Maya's burner phone, a cheap prepaid device Riley had bought, vibrated on the nightstand. Another unknown number. She hesitated, then answered, putting it on speaker. "Is this Valkyrie?" The voice was a gravelly whisper she hadn't heard in over a year. A voice she thought she'd never hear again. Her breath caught in her throat. "Ghost." "Good to hear your voice, Lieutenant Commander," Alex Ramirez said. "I hear you're in a bit of trouble, and I think I have something you need." Maya sank onto the edge of the bed, a wave of shock and disbelief washing over her. "You're alive." "Alive and pissed off," he replied. "I know what you saw in the South China Sea, because I saw it too. And I know what Thorne is selling. It's called Project Chimera." "Chimera." Riley leaned in closer to the phone. "A next-generation autonomous drone swarm," Alex explained. AI-controlled, capable of overwhelming any existing naval defense system. It's not just a weapon, it's the key to naval supremacy for the next 50 years. And Thorne is about to hand-deliver it to an organization that answers to no one. The room fell silent. The stakes had just been raised from treason to a global catastrophe. "There's more," Alex continued. "I have the intel. The final transfer is happening in 72 hours. On a decommissioned oil rig, the Ocean Star, in international waters off the coast of Mexico. Thorne will be there personally to oversee the handover." This was it, the endgame. Not just a chance to clear her name, but a chance to stop an unimaginable disaster. "We can't do this alone, Ghost," Maya said, her mind already racing, the operator in her taking over. "You're not alone," Alex's voice came back, steady and sure. "I'm on my way, and I'm bringing friends." Maya looked at Riley, whose face was a mixture of shock and grim determination. The lone Volf and CIS agent had just found his pack. The hunted were about to become the hunters. The rendezvous point was a disused aircraft hangar in the California desert, a place where forgotten machines went to die. Inside, under the dim glow of a single work light, the ghost and the fugitives finally met. Master Chief Alex Ramirez looked leaner, harder than Maya remembered, his face weathered by the sun and creased with a new intensity. He wasn't the easygoing senior NCO she once knew. He was a man forged into a single purpose. With him were two others. The first was a woman in her late 20s with a shock of purple hair and a laptop covered in hacker stickers. This was Glitch, a former NSA cyber warfare analyst who had been burned by the agency and now operated in the gray zones of the digital world. The second was a burly, bearded man who looked like he could wrestle a bear and win. Decker, a former Delta Force breacher who owed Alex his life. They were Alex's friends, a small team of deniable assets, bound by loyalty and a shared distrust of the system. Project Chimera isn't just a drone swarm, Glitch said, her fingers flying across her keyboard, bringing up schematics and data streams on a portable monitor. It's a self-learning network. Each drone communicates, adapts, and evolves its tactics in real time. You don't fight it, you survive it. If Aegis gets their hands on this, they can hold entire nations hostage. The Ocean Star rig is their fortress, Decker added, pointing to a satellite image. It's been retrofitted with state-of-the-art surveillance, anti-air, and anti-ship capabilities. Manned by a full company of Aegis's best mercs, hitting it head-on is suicide. We're not hitting it head-on, Alex said, unrolling a set of blueprints on a makeshift table. We're going under. He pointed to a series of underwater service tunnels marked on the rig's original plans. This is your specialty, Valkyrie. You'll lead an insertion team through the submerged access point. Glitch will create a diversion, a ghost in their machine to draw their attention to the upper levels. Decker and I will provide overwatch and take out their comms tower. Riley, you're our eye in the sky. You'll coordinate everything from a safe distance. It was a bold, borderline insane plan, conceived out of desperation and held together by trust. Where do we get the gear, the SEALs to form an insertion team? Maya asked. The question hung in the air. She was a fugitive. Asking any active duty operator to help her would be asking them to commit career suicide, or worse, treason. Alex smiled grimly. You let me worrying about that. Over the next 36 hours, Alex made a series of encrypted calls. He didn't call SEAL commanders or high-ranking officers. He called the men on the ground. Senior chiefs, master chiefs, the grizzled veterans who formed the backbone of the teams. He didn't give them orders. He told them the truth. He told them about Thorn, about Aegis, about Project Chimera. He told them Valkyrie was being framed to cover up a betrayal that threatened the very soul of the Navy. He asked for volunteers for an unsanctioned, off-the-books mission. A mission from which they might not return, and for which they would receive no medals, only the quiet satisfaction of doing what was right. And they came. One by one, they arrived at the desert hangar in unmarked trucks, their faces set with grim resolve. 8 of them. 8 active duty SEALs who were willing to risk everything, not for an order, but for a cause. They trusted Alex Ramirez, and they believed in Maya Olsen. They were defying their command, their careers, their oaths to the chain of command, to uphold a higher oath to their country. The hangar transformed into a makeshift armory and briefing room. Weapons were checked, gear was packed, and the plan was rehearsed until it was muscle memory. There were no ranks here, only roles. Maya was the assault team leader, her authority absolute and unquestioned. She saw in the eyes of these men a fierce loyalty that had been stolen from her. It was a powerful, humbling feeling. As the final hour approached, Maya found herself standing with Alex, watching the sun dip below the desert horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple. You ready for this, Lieutenant Commander? He asked softly. I've never been more ready for anything in my life, Master Chief, she replied. But Alex, thank you for believing me, for not letting me fight this alone. We don't leave our own behind, he said, his gaze fixed on the horizon. Thorn and his kind, they forget that. They think loyalty can be bought and sold. They think honor is just a word in a manual. Tonight, we're going to remind them what it really means. Under the cover of darkness, 2 unmarked Black Hawk helicopters, borrowed by Decker from a very private and very illegal airfield, lifted off from the desert floor. They flew low and fast, hugging the terrain, their destination a steel island in the dark ocean, where the fate of nations was about to be decided. The night was moonless, the sea a churning expanse of black. The Ocean Star oil rig loomed out of the darkness like a skeletal monster, its lights a malevolent glare against the horizon. 2 miles out, the helicopters descended, their engines a low whisper against the wind. The SEAL team, led by Maya, fast-stroked into inflatable boats, which immediately sped towards the rig, their engines muffled, their hulls cutting silently through the waves. Glitch, are you in? Maya whispered into her comms unit. Like a virus in your grandma's computer. Glitch's voice chirped back from a command post set up on a fishing trawler miles away, where she, Riley, and Decker were coordinating. Initiating Phase 1. Get ready for some fireworks. On the rig, alarms began to blare. Screens in the control room flickered with false readings of fire in the engine room, a breach on the helipad. Aegis mercenaries scrambled, their attention drawn upwards, just as planned. The diversion is working, Maya said to her team. Huddled in the boat beneath the rig's massive legs, we're green to go. One by one, they slipped into the cold water, the dark waves closing over their heads. The world became a silent, green-tinged space, illuminated only by the lights on their gear. Maya led them down, following the massive support pillar to the submerged access tunnel. The heavy steel hatch was maglocked. It was supposed to be impenetrable. No problem, whispered Sledge, the team's breacher, as he placed a small, shaped charge on the lock. A muffled thump and a cloud of bubbles, and the hatch swung inward. Inside, the air was stale and heavy with the smell of rust and oil. They moved through the labyrinth in service tunnels, their footsteps echoing in the silence. They were a shadow army, moving through the rig's metallic guts, unseen and unheard. Comms tower is down, Decker's voice crackled in their ears. They're deaf and blind to the outside world. They reached the central core, the point where they would split up. Bravo team, you're with me, Maya ordered. We're going for the objective, the Chimera control module, Alpha. You have sabotage. Plant charges on the rig's primary generator and fuel reserves. If we can't take the tech, nobody gets it. The team separated, melting into the shadows. Maya led her team up a series of ladders, emerging into the rig's main processing level. The sounds of shouting and running boots from above told them the diversion was still working. They were close. They found the control module in a heavily reinforced laboratory. It was a sleek, black server rack, humming with power, guarded by 4 Aegis mercs. The firefight was swift and brutal. The SEALs moved with a lethal ballet of precision, suppressing fire and fluid motion. In less than 30 seconds, the guards were down, and the lab was secure. Glitch, we have the module, Maya reported, her heart pounding. How do we disable it? You can't, not from there. The whole system is quantum encrypted. You have to physically remove the core data drive. It's the silver case, bottom rack. Maya located the drive. As she reached for it, the lab's heavy blast door began to slide shut, a trap. They know we're here, a team member shouted. Get the drive. Maya yelled, providing cover fire as 2 of her men worked to pry the case free. The door was closing fast. With a final grunt, they yanked the drive loose just as the door slammed shut with a deafening boom. They were trapped. Riley, status, Maya yelled into her comms. Not good, Valkyrie, Riley's voice was tense. Thorn isn't in the main command center. He's on a stealth submersible docked at the sublevel. He's getting ready to bolt, and he's initiated the rig self-destruct sequence. You have 10 minutes. The walls of the lab began to glow red as emergency lights kicked on. A calm, computerized voice echoed through the facility. Self-destruct sequence activated. Detonation in 10 minutes. Suddenly, Maya's personal fight for justice had become a race to save her team and herself from a fiery grave, 1,000 miles from home, with the world's most dangerous weapon in her hands. There's always a back door, Sledge grunted, examining the seams of the blast door. He began prepping another, more powerful breaching charge. Make it fast, Maya said, her eyes fixed on the timer projected on the wall. 8 minutes, Alpha Team. What's your status? We need an exit strategy. Generators and fuel reserves are wired, Valkyrie, came the reply. But all primary exits are swarming with Aegis. We're pinned down. The situation was grim. They were trapped deep inside a steel fortress that was about to blow itself to kingdom come, hunted by a small army of elite mercenaries. Riley, Decker, we need an evac, now. Alex's voice cut through the comms, a blade of authority. Get the birds in close, forget stealth. On it, Decker replied, but it's gonna be a hot LZ. The charge on the blast door detonated with a concussive force that shook the entire level. The door buckled, creating a gap just wide enough for a man to squeeze through. Go, 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 Maya ordered. They spilled out into the corridor just as a squad of Aegis mercs rounded the corner. The narrow hallway erupted in a storm of muzzle flashes and ricocheting bullets. It was brutal, close-quarters combat. "Fall back to the central platform," Maya yelled, laying down suppressing fire as her team retreated. She clutched the Chimera data drive to her chest. It felt as heavy as an anchor. They fought their way back to the rig's multi-level central platform, a vast open space of catwalks and pipes. Below them, Alpha Team was engaged in a similar fight, using the industrial machinery for cover. "Valkyrie, Thorn's sub is disengaging." Riley's voice was frantic. "He's getting away." Maya looked down through the gray-arid catwalk. She could see the sleek, black submersible detaching from its docking clamps in the moon pool 3 levels below. In the cockpit, illuminated by the glow of the controls, she saw him, Admiral Marcus Thorn. He looked up, and for a split second, their eyes met across the chaotic expanse of steel and gunfire. He gave a small, mocking salute before the sub began to sink into the dark water. Rage, cold and absolute, washed over her. He wasn't getting away. "Alex, I'm going after Thorn," she said into her comms, her voice deadly calm. "Maya, no, it's a suicide run. Get to the evac point." "Negative, he doesn't get to run." She handed the Chimera drive to her second-in-command. "Get this to the helicopter. That's an order." Before anyone could stop her, she broke from cover. She ran along the catwalk, bullets sparking around her, and vaulted over the railing. She fell, twisting in the air, landing hard on a large pipe 1 level down, the impact jarring every bone in her body. She ignored the pain and kept moving, a relentless predator closing in on her prey. She reached the submersible bay just as the sub's hatch was closing. With a final, desperate sprint, she leapt, her fingers catching the edge of the hatch just before it sealed. The sub submerged, dragging her down into the crushing blackness of the deep. Her muscles screamed as she held on, the water pressure building around her. She found a handhold and pulled herself onto the sub's hull. Thorn wouldn't expect this. He thought he was safe. Inside the cockpit, Thorn saw the pressure warning for the outer hatch flicker. He looked at his sonar screen. No other vessels. He dismissed it as a glitch. A fatal mistake. Maya found the emergency release valve for the cockpit. It was a manual override, meant for deep-sea rescue. It was never meant to be opened from the outside while the sub was in motion. She braced herself and pulled with all her strength. The seal broke with a groan of protesting metal. Water began to flood the cockpit. Thorn spun around, his face a mask of disbelief and fury as Maya, framed by the torrent of incoming water, appeared at the hatch. He drew a sidearm, but the small cockpit was already filling rapidly, the water throwing off his aim. Maya lunged, and the two of them became a tangle of limbs in the chaotic, flooding space. This wasn't a battle of soldiers anymore. It was primal, a struggle for survival. She saw the self-destruct timer for the rig reflected in the viewport. 30 seconds. She slammed Thorn's head against a control panel. He slumped, momentarily stunned. She had to get out. But as she turned to the hatch, Thorn lunged again, his hands closing around her throat. His eyes were wild, filled with the rage of a king whose empire was crumbling. "You have ruined everything," he choked out. Her vision started to tunnel. The timer read 15 seconds. With the last of her strength, she drove her knee into his side, breaking his grip. She shoved him back and scrambled for the hatch. As she pulled herself out, she saw the lights of the rig above her begin to detonate in a chain reaction. The shockwave hit her like a physical blow, a hammer of pure force that sent her tumbling through the water, away from the imploding submersible and the man who had betrayed everything. The world became a maelstrom of fire, water, and twisted steel. Then, nothing. Silence. Then, the gentle lapping of water. Maya coughed, her body a single, throbbing symphony of pain. She was floating, buoyed by her tactical vest. Above her, the night sky was ablaze, not with stars, but with the inferno of the Ocean Star rig, a funeral pyre on the horizon. A searchlight cut through the darkness, sweeping across the debris-strewn water. It found her. "We have her. We have Valkyrie." Decker's voice, rough with relief, boomed from a helicopter hovering overhead. A rescue line dropped down, and strong hands pulled her from the water, lifting her away from the chaos and into the relative safety of the helicopter cabin. The rest of the team was there, battered and bruised, but alive. All of them. They had made it. Alex wrapped a thermal blanket around her, his face a mixture of fury and awe. "I ought to court-martial you for that stunt, Lieutenant Commander," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "You'll have to get in line, Master Chief," she rasped, a weak smile touching her lips. In her hand, she was still clutching something. A small, waterproof data chip she had ripped from Thorne's uniform during their struggle. It was his personal drive, his ledger. Back at the desert hangar, as the sun began its slow ascent, Glitch plugged the chip into her terminal, the screen filled with encrypted files. It would take her weeks to break them all, but the first few were enough. It was all there, bank account numbers in untraceable offshore accounts. Coded communications, a list of high-level assets in government and industry, both in the US and abroad. And the ultimate goal of Project Chimera, it wasn't meant to be sold. It was meant to be deployed by Aegis to trigger a conflict between the US and China in the Pacific, a war from which they, as the world's premier private military, would profit immensely. Thorne wasn't just a traitor, he was an architect of global chaos, driven by a god complex and insatiable greed. The aftermath was a quiet earthquake that shook the foundations of power in Washington, D.C. The Chimera data drive, along with Riley's official report and the testimony of 9 highly decorated SEALs, could not be ignored. A secret congressional hearing was convened. Dozens of arrests were made, Aegis Dynamics was dismantled, its assets seized, its leadership vanishing into the shadows to be hunted by intelligence agencies worldwide. The official story given to the public was that a rogue admiral had been stopped from selling state secrets. The true scope of the crisis was buried under layers of classification. For their actions, the 8 SEAL volunteers received nothing, no medals, no public recognition. Instead, they received quiet transfers to training billets, their unsanctioned mission officially never having happened. It was the price of their integrity, and they paid it without complaint. Riley was promoted, heading up a new task force dedicated to investigating corruption within the military-industrial complex. Alex Ramirez was officially reinstated, his death rescinded, and was given a new, highly classified role working alongside Riley. And Maya. She stood on the beach at Coronado, looking out at the calm, blue Pacific. The charges against her had been dropped, her record expunged. She had been offered a promotion, a prestigious command at the Pentagon, a safe and comfortable desk job far from the water. She refused it all. The fight wasn't over, Thorne was gone, but the system that created him remained. The shadows were still there. Her war was not for medals or for rank. It was for the soul of the institution she loved, and for the men and women who served it with true honor. She had faced down betrayal from her subordinates, her commanders, and the highest levels of her government. She had been hunted, disavowed, and left for dead. But through it all, she held on to the one thing they could not take from her, her integrity. She learned that true loyalty isn't blind obedience to the chain of command, but an unwavering commitment to the principles that command is supposed to represent. She learned that sometimes, to save something, you have to be willing to stand against it. And she learned that you are never truly alone when you are fighting for what is right. This story is a testament to the courage to speak truth to power, no matter the cost. It's a reminder that the greatest battles are often fought, not against foreign enemies, but against the darkness that can grow within our own ranks. What did you think of Maya's journey? What would you have done in her position? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Your perspective is what makes this community so incredible. And if this story moved you, please consider sharing it with someone who appreciates tales of courage and conviction. And of course, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss another story. Thank you for listening, and until next time, stay strong and stay true.